jebe dra no bar jebe ge tarba dan tam je gembe bardu jo bar jeba tam je ge se jebe manang kadang nyam pe sen chen tam je de wa dan den dung ya dan de ne du la na me pa yang tabra so pe chan ju rim pu je to para ja da la dhawa jebe dra no bar jebe ge tarba dan tam je gembe bardu jo bra jeba tam je ge se jebe manang kadang nyam pe sen chen tam je de wa dan den dung ya dan de ne de la na me pa yang tabra so be chan ju rim pu je to bra jo de je de sama ge ge bar de lunga yesum ge wa la go ma je bar de lunga yesum ge wa la go de de ne son te ne ma chan ta sam ge bar de lunga yesum ge wa la go son je jodan so ge jonam la chan ju bar de da ne kyab su je da ge jin se ge be so nang ge chola pen je san je du pro ju san je jodan so ge jonam la chan ju bar de da ne kyab su je da ge jin se ge be so nang ge Jola bencher sanje dubra shu sanje jodan soge jonam la changchu pardu dhane kyabzu che dhage jinsu gebe sonang ki drola bencher sanje dubra shu monang kadang nyampe tam che dewa dang dewe gendan tempra gyuji dungyao dang dungyao gi gyudang drewa gyuji dungyao me pe dewa dang me drewa gyuji niring chadang nidang drewe dang nyam la nepra gyuji manang kadang nyam pe senje tam che dewa dang dewe gyundan tempra gyuji dungyao dang dungyao gi gyudam drewa gyuji dungyao me pe dewa dang me drewa gyuji niring chadang nidang drewe dang nyam la nepra gyuji manang kadang nyam pe sen chen tam che dewa dang dewe gyundan tempra gyuji dungyao dang dungyao gi gyudang drewa gyuji dungyao me pe dewa dang me drewa gyuji niring chadang nidang drewe dang nyam la nepra gyuji. Take just a few moments to let both body and mind to settle. Settling into their own places, letting them find their own places of rest and stability and evenness of both body and mind, and brightness of body and mind. Now the 7 branch puja in the different languages, in the different audio channels. In all the worlds of the 10 directions reside Tathagatas of the 3 times. Before each of you, lions among humans, I prostrate joyfully with body, speech, and mind. By the power of this aspiration to noble deeds, all conquerors appear vividly in my mind. With as many bodies as there are atoms in all lands, I prostrate to all you conquerors. In each atom are Buddhas, numberless as atoms, all in the midst of the heirs of the Buddhas. Thus I conceive of this Dharma Dhatu as completely filled with you conquerors. In this way, with infinite oceans of praise and oceans of diverse melodies, I sing the excellent qualities of all you conquerors, and praise all of you gone to bliss with the best flowers and best garlands, best music, ointments, and excellent parasols, finest lamps and superior incense. I offer to you conquerors with excellent garments and best fragrances, and sandalwood powder heap high as Mount Meru, all wondrous offerings perfectly arranged. I offer to you conquerors these vast and unequal offerings. To each and every one of you conquerors, with the power of conviction and noble deeds, I prostrate and offer to all you conquerors all the harmful deeds that I have done with my body, speech, and mind. Under the power of desire, hatred, and ignorance, I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in all the meritorious deeds of all conquerors in the 10 directions, and the heirs of the Buddha, solitary realizers, hearers still in training and beyond, and all wandering beings, you who are lamps, worlds of the 10 directions, who have unobstructedly attained Buddhahood through the stages of Bodhi. O you who are my protectors, please turn the unexhaled wheel of Dharma. With palms together, I earnestly beseech you who may intend to manifest final nirvana, please remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the world, for the happiness and well-being of all wandering beings. Whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete Bodhi. This ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain, fog, continent, sun, and moon, I hold in my mind as a Buddha land and offer it. May all migratory wandering beings experience such a pure land. To the Gurus who possess the 3 kayas, I offer the outer, inner, secret, and thusness offerings with my body, wealth, and all phenomenal existence. Please grant the unsurpassed supreme attainment, whatever slight virtue I may have gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching. I now dedicate it all to complete Bodhi. Om Guru Deva Dakinirana Mandala Prateja Soha. Please turn the wheel of Dharma, of the greater, lesser, and common vehicles in accordance with the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. Doji Janjan de Lena Roda, Mamita Popaduchi, then Gunkadin Sundin Savela Mesham Sajula Mayidam Chogyongla, so what this was Daji Jinji, Lokia, Brinki Domesam Linga, and Dropetum Sonyon Lakia. So me kyo wa do je chang pa ji den kum pa shab la do do ta do sam kyo le me chin ji lo shi tu je chen den ge mu pa sha ne kyang sem do de do to pra chen je le hong o je ye je na chang sa pe ma ge sa thong po la ya sen cho ge ngo drum ye pe ma ju ne she shu da go do kan do ma bu go ra ge ge je se tha do ge chen je lo je she so so go ro pe ma se de hong Omen chu ki yiki poda ne dosa sanje kunji ngomo ni ransen choku ngon sun ton se pa tsawe la me shabla so wa So today we continue to verse 112. So this next section, Khenpo Kumpel identifies the verses 112 to 118 and suggests that this section is helping us to train to see ordinary sentient beings as a field of merit. Now, the expressions field of merit is often reserved for the three jewels as a field of merit, as in they are the fields where we plant these seeds of virtue, then that could sprout and give rise to the grains that are nourishment, which is merit. And so normally it's reserved for like the three jewels. But here Shantideva wants us to see how, from another perspective, ordinary sentient beings, if we know how to relate to them, they too become these fields of merit. So now let us read this section from 112 to 118. And so the mighty sage has spoken of the field of beings as well as the field of conquerors. Many who brought happiness to beings have passed beyond attaining to perfection. Thus, the state of Buddhahood depends on beings and on Buddhas equally. What kind of practice is it then that honors only Buddhas but not beings? Not in the qualities of their minds, but in the fruits they give are they alike. In beings too, such excellence resides, and therefore beings and Buddhas are the same. Offerings made to those with loving minds reveal the eminence of living beings. Merit that accrues from faith in Buddha shows in turn the Buddha's eminence. Although not one of them is equal to the Buddhas, who are oceans of perfection, because they have a share in bringing forth enlightenment, beings may be likened to the Buddhas. If Of such a gathering of supreme excellence, a tiny part appeared in certain beings. The three worlds made in offering to them would be a very little thing. Since there lies in beings a share in bringing forth the supreme and enlightened state, by virtue of this parity alone, it is right I should reverence them. Yes, so this section, these verses here, quite clear, right? In making a point, making the argument that sentient beings, and in this case, sentient beings, not in terms of the wondrous qualities that are apparent now with regards to them, but in terms of how they actually are one of the main causes for Buddha's arising, meaning for other beings to achieve Buddhahood. Therefore, from that perspective, both Buddhas who directly cause or guide beings to achieve the state of Buddha, and sentient beings who indirectly, you could say, also cause beings to ripen into the state of Buddha, they both are equal in terms of that aspect. And so then from that perspective, we should have not only, not resent sentient beings, and especially sentient beings whom we perceive to stand in the way of us getting what we want, or they are blocking us from getting if they're blocking us from what we want, or that they are, bringing what we don't want. So not only should we not resent sentient beings for doing that, but we should, in fact, be grateful to them and pay them homage and reverence. In fact, if you think more about it, it is from the Buddhas, and then extending from there, the Dharma and the Sangha, that we receive instructions. But these instructions, such as instructions to meditate on the four immeasurable minds, which become the basis for generating bodhicitta, for generating aspiration bodhicitta, and the instructions on how to practice the 6 paramitas, which is the generation of action bodhicitta. All these things are practiced in relation to ordinary sentient beings. They are not practiced in relation to the 3 jewels. The 3 jewels are not going to test our patience. The 3 jewels are not going to help us develop diligence or generosity. It is in relation to confused and unreasonable and difficult sentient beings, that we can actually then put the instructions that we were given by the three jewels into practice, then that practice will ripen into results. So again, here Shantideva is saying, so how can we, reverence the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, but then treat sentient beings with contempt? So we have these big pujas, big offerings, especially in Asia, which is very good, because the other side of this, like in the West, people don't do any of that, and then they just try to think their way to enlightenment, which is not possible. They just think about the Dharma and they think, oh yes, I get it, but then it's when you say, oh, you should fill your water bowls carefully. Oh no, that's just ritual. Well, if you don't know how to fill your water bowls, for example, I'm not saying that you all have to fill water bowls, but these skillful methods, if you don't commit to a set of skillful methods, and you just have the teachings in the abstract up in your head, that's also not going to work. Anyway, these rituals of expressing devotion and admiration for the Buddha qualities that we do, right? So we reverence the Buddhas that much. But then when we relate with sentient beings, we treat them with contempt, we treat them with disregard. So Shantideva says, that's makes no sense. That's inconsistent.
Sorry, Dr. Lai, just now you mentioned we meditate on what to generate aspiration bodhicitta?
4 immeasurable minds. Yeah. So the 4 immeasurable minds, the 6 paramitas, they are all practice, actualize in relation to sentient beings, not in relation to awakened beings. So this is verses 112 and 113. So 114 is when Shantideva raises the kind of hypothetical objection and say, well, how can we say, Buddhas and sentient beings are the same? Are you saying that they have the same qualities? And here it says, yes, of course, in terms of these qualities. Now, of course, both sentient beings and Buddhas have the same qualities that we call Buddha qualities. But there's a great difference between Buddhas and sentient beings in terms of how much of these qualities have manifested and therefore are able to benefit beings. In terms of that, from that way of benefiting beings, as in those qualities being put to use to benefit beings, then of course, no doubt, the Buddhas are supreme, and sentient beings are far from that. But in terms of how both Buddhas and sentient beings have these qualities innate in them, there is no difference. There they are both as excellent. Whether those qualities are covered or uncovered, they exist on the ground level, so to say. Then second point is back to that point about Buddhas, which is defined as sentient beings whose Buddha qualities have become manifested through polishing, right? The analogy of polishing a diamond, so that the diamond can now be seen and experienced and worth, like a diamond is worth. From that perspective, we say those Buddha qualities can benefit beings. But for us bodhisattvas, so to say, right, not to be pretentious, but the definition of, for those of us who have taken the bodhisattva vow, then, especially for us, even unpolished sentient beings are also helping us through their unpolished nature. So that's 114. One 115 says, the offerings made to those with loving minds reveal the eminence of beings. So 115 is contrasting or comparing, right? And then, offerings made to those with loving minds reveal the eminence of living beings. So that's one side. The other side, merit that occurs from faith in the Buddha shows in turn the Buddha's eminence. what this verse seems to be saying is this. Again, he's speaking to his fellow monks. So his fellow monks get it, the second part. Because, in a religious context, in a religious environment, day in, day out, you're reminded, make offerings to the Buddha. There's big golden Buddha statue in the shrine, very special, very mysterious, very inspiring. So it says, when we make offerings to Buddhas in this way with our faith, this shows how special Buddhas are. The first part, what he's doing with the first part seems to me, it's not very clear, even in the commentary of Khenpo Kumpel. The truth is, maybe my limited wisdom, I'm not very convinced, that he knows exactly what Shantideva is saying here. Yeah, that's just my confession. But anyway, here I think what Shantideva is saying is that, when someone, ordinary person, because of them being loving, right, to others, it draws admiration from others. Especially if that ordinary person is loving to someone that the rest of us would label as unlovable because they're so terrible. So then when we see such people, right, we have admiration for such people that we make offerings. It doesn't have to be like, making offerings, incense, flowers, but like we kind of happily would serve this person, would be friendly to, would be attracted to such a person. But how did this person gain our confidence? By, in a sense, right, relying on these unlovable, difficult sentient beings. Because we see them being loving even to unlovable, quote-unquote, difficult sentient beings, we gain admiration for the person who has the ability to do this. So here it shows again the power of unreasonable, seemingly unlovable beings as actually helping us. So verses 116, 17, and 18 basically continues in this direction, emphasizing that yes, there is a distinct difference between Buddhas and sentient beings with regards to how much they have manifested these Buddha qualities. But in terms of needing both these groups, if we were to actualize our Bodhisattva vow, then equally both groups are needed. And therefore, we should not so quickly, at least should not so quickly. Ultimately, we should not, period. Full stop. We should not treat sentient beings, especially difficult sentient beings who bring us problems with contempt. It says we should not. But at least now you can say, I will try so that I do not so quickly immediately respond to people who bring me trouble as, ugh, you are troublesome. I need to get rid of you. Which, it's most of us do this on different levels of annoyance. A cashier, as you're checking out in the supermarket, does something or doesn't do something, we strongly or not so strongly, we register like an annoyance, like, this person is, maybe should find another job. So that's our way of pushing away. Or we witness, or not we witness, but this is more. This is really more about when trouble is brought to us, when someone messes up, then, we very instinctively, like, I wish this person is not here. So Shantideva is urging us to begin to re-strategize. You can look at it this way. Shantideva is teaching us to re-strategize. By that, what I mean is, he says, if you take the wrong approach, then everywhere you go, it's just unsatisfying and unacceptable. But if you can change your way of experiencing and responding to whatever turns up, then no matter where you go, you have true protection. Protection from dukkha. So again, in the Lojong 8 verses of mind training, yeah, the very first verse, it says, that sentient beings are like wish-fulfilling jewels. So in the mythology of wish-fulfilling jewels, called Mani, Mani Ratna, so in the mythology of wish-fulfilling jewels, wish-fulfilling jewels are sort of like, these Aladdin's lamp, you rub the lamp and then you polish the lamp and then some genie comes out, and they will fulfill your wishes. But in the wish-fulfilling jewel, unlike the story of the genie in the lamp, there's no like only three, and then the genie will try to trick you. The wish-fulfilling gem, the wish-fulfilling jewel, it will just fulfill your wishes. However, there is a whole process of how, what you have to do in order for this wish-fulfilling jewel to actually function as a wish-fulfilling jewel. So some understanding of like at least the mythology behind a wish-fulfilling jewel will help us appreciate the connection, the analogy being made, like, sentient beings really are wish-fulfilling jewels. So then, where do you find these wish-fulfilling jewels? So first thing they say is like, actually, these wish-fulfilling jewels, to those who are not trained, who don't know how to tell, all they see are just like rocks, useless rocks. But for one who knows how to recognize them, from among this heap of useless rocks, and they will know, oh, that is a wish-fulfilling jewel. So after that, you take it up away from the heap of other rocks. Then it says you have to clean and polish. You clean them with so this is ancient India, like with milk, with yogurt. And so these are ways that people make offerings to the images of the gods. You bathe the gods in milk, you bathe the statues of the gods in milk, in honey, in curd. All these like saffron water, clear water. If you have seen Hindus, priests performing pujas for these statues, like very elaborate pujas, they even have like the nectar of 5 types of fruits, use that. So this is like a super spa for the gods, spa treatment for the god statues. And so it says, likewise, you have to do this for this wish-fulfilling jewel. And then after that, it says you hoist them, you put them on top of a victory banner. So victory banner is this ritual object on a very high flagpole. On the top, and there is a banner, that is a victory banner. And then you put this jewel on top of the victory banner, and then you make offerings to this wish-fulfilling jewel. And only when you are able to do all of that, then the wish-fulfilling jewel will actually function as a wish-fulfilling jewel. So in the same way, if we, with our eyes, perceive beings as, with contempt, especially beings who bring us trouble, then they are like those wish-fulfilling jewels that we don't recognize and we think it's just a useless pile of rocks and dirt. But if we know how to recognize and then treat them as wish-fulfilling jewels, honor them, make offerings to them, so to say, right, in that example, then they truly can become wish-fulfilling jewels. And they do not become wish-fulfilling jewels by giving us what we want. That's not how they become wish-fulfilling jewels. They become wish-fulfilling jewels by drawing out the qualities that we have, by revealing the diamond that we are. So sentient beings, especially difficult sentient beings, they are going to be the sandpaper that is necessary. The super diamond sandpaper to polish diamonds. So of course, it's not going to be smooth. It's going to be rough. But without that roughness, polishing the diamond that we are, our diamond cannot be seen. Then those who are obviously good to us, kind to us, supporting of us, they are like the water, that will wash this jewel, wash away the dirt. But it's because the sandpaper is polishing. And that's why then the water becomes, really useful. Otherwise, the water is just, makes you feel good, but in a way, it doesn't really bring out the sparkle of the diamond. So we'll take a break now, and then we'll come back and continue after the break. Om Wage Jore Mum Wage Jore Om Wage Jore Mum Wage Jore Om Wage Jore Mum Wage Jore Om Wage Jore 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 Wage Jore wage jware mum, wage jware mum. 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 So in the chat on Zoom, I just shared with you the name of the Kempo who is heading that project in Bhutan that I told you about. It will be the first Dribung Kagyu place for educating monks for many centuries. Up till maybe the 15th century, there were places like that in Bhutan, but not since then. So that's the name of the Kempo. And if you are on Facebook, if you want to connect with him, you can request friend, and then you can see all his different updates about the monks and what they are doing. Yes, so that is the contact, and feel free. He communicates well in English. His English is good, so you can feel free to directly contact him, and if you want to inspire to help him, you can directly. You don't have to do it through me, but a number of you have written to us, and I believe Javier and those helping him have sent out information on how to contribute. But if you want to directly help, please get in touch with Kempo. Yeah. So now, the next section is talking about how, Khenpo Kumbel says, in this next section from verses 119 to 127, Shantideva is showing us how by treating sentient beings the same way that we treat Buddhas, this will truly make the Buddhas happy. Buddhist texts, have a Buddhist authors, Buddhist texts, Buddhist, Buddhists who try to put things into words, have a little bit of a tighter spot compared to others in terms of saying even things like, oh, this will make the Buddhas really happy, right? Because these kinds of sentiments are, by definition, kind of our samsaric confused ideas of happiness, like, oh, this will make the Buddhas happy. We should not misunderstand and think like, otherwise it will make the Buddha sad, right? You can't make the Buddha sad. If you make the Buddha sad, then Buddhas are not Buddhas anymore. But on the other hand, you also don't want to make it, you don't want to think that Buddhas are like rocks, and stones, no matter what you do, they are incapable of responding. So poetic Buddhist writings, especially, and devotional Buddhist writings are always in a kind of difficult spot in striking the middle ground between appealing to our emotions. So essentially, this is what, like, for example, here Shantideva is doing. He's appealing to our emotions, which we still have, and using that to lead us into removing mental defilements. So we have to remember that, and not naively or mistakenly think, oh, this will make the Buddhas happy, but those things will make Buddhas upset. like other people might talk about their God, their savior, Buddhas, we have to remember, Buddhas are not like that. So 119 to 127, let's read this. The Buddhas are my true unfailing friends. Boundless are the benefits they bring to me. How else may I repay their goodness but by making living beings happy? By helping beings, we repay the ones who sacrifice their lives for us and plunge into the hell of unrelenting pain. Should beings therefore do great harm to me, I'll strive to bring them only benefit. For those who have become my lords at times took care not even of their own bodies. Why should I, a fool, behave with such conceit? Why should I not become the slave of others? Buddhists are made happy by the joy of beings. They sorrow, they lament when beings suffer. By bringing joy to beings, then I please the Buddhas also. By wounding them, I wound the Buddhas too. Just as there's no sensual delight to please the mind of one whose body burns in fire, there's no way to please the great compassionate ones while we ourselves are causes of another's pain. The damage I have done to beings saddens all the Buddhas in their great compassion. Therefore, all these evils I confess today and pray that they will bear with my offenses, that I might rejoice the Buddha's hearts. Henceforth, I will be master of myself, the servant of the world. I shall not seek revenge through crowds, though crowds may trample on my head or kill me. Let the guardians of the world rejoice. The great compassionate lords consider as themselves all beings. There's no doubt of this. Those whom I perceive as beings are Buddhas in themselves. How can I not treat them with respect? This very thing is pleasing to the Buddha's hearts and perfectly secures the welfare of myself. This will drive away the sorrows of the world, and therefore it will be my constant work. Yeah, so yeah, right in this section, you know, he takes poetic license, as we would say in English. Good luck translating that into Chinese or Spanish. I don't know. Maybe Spanish, there's an easier equivalent. He takes poetic license. He says, oh, you know, when we harm sentient beings, Buddhas will be so sad with us. When we, you know, do dumb things, you know, to harm ourselves, to harm others, this really, you know, causes the Buddhas to be distressed. So this is poetic license. He's not saying, you know, Buddhas become sad, become depressed. Buddhas, by definition, are beyond. But he is appealing to our emotions and channeling our emotions to help us train in this regard, especially. Like, if we really, again, he's talking to his monks, his fellow monks, who are presumably, you know, devoted to Buddha. So this may or may not be so powerful for many of you. Buddha, I don't know, you know, I like Buddhism, you know, these Buddha business, I don't know. So here, if you don't know, you know, this Buddhas, you know, you can think, you know, like those who have inspired you, right, to practice the Dharma, those great teachers that you have met or read about and seen from afar. Know that, you know, what makes them most happy is when we treat all beings with care and concern and cherish beings, because they have, these others that we admire so much, have given their whole lives to the project of benefiting beings. So we don't please them by plastering our house with as many poses of these great masters as we have, you know, and different frames. Every turn of the house, you know, we have them. We don't please them really by, you know, praising them, advertising them. There's no better way to please them, so to say, than to join them in their efforts to be good to the world, to be of benefit to other beings. So when we are able to do that, then know that that's what they are most satisfied with. So that's why it is said that serving our teachers is an important aspect of our training, but the best service we can give to our teacher, to best offering we can give to our teachers, to our guides, is to put into practice what they have taught. And so then, at the heart of what they have taught is they have taught us the two bodhicittas. And so then our task is to actualize these two bodhicittas. Then, it will truly make them happy. Verse 126, I want to call your attention to this. There you can say that the relative way of looking at things, at this issue, and the ultimate way is given in 126. So beginning with the relative, the great compassionate lords consider as themselves all beings. There is no doubt of this. So the great compassionate lords are the Buddhas. So Buddhas regard all beings as no different from themselves. So that is indicating to us how on the relative level of practice, practicing the relative aspect of this matter, we should train to see how all beings are no different from us. The training on the ultimate level is to then the next two lines, which those whom I perceive as beings are in fact Buddhas, meaning that their innate nature is Buddhas. There's no doubt. So those whom I perceive as ordinary beings, in fact, they are Buddhas in terms of their nature. So that's the ultimate aspect. So this, the relative and ultimate, or the relative and the absolute aspect of beings being Buddhas. First, we train to see them as Buddhas. That's the relative. But that training has to be based on an understanding that, and the reason why we do this is not that we're making up something that is not true, but in fact, we are trying to see, to polish our own perception so that we see the truth of the situation, which is, in fact, all beings are Buddhas. So then 127, it says, this very thing is pleasing to the Buddha's heart and perfectly secures the welfare of myself. This will drive away the sorrows of the world, and therefore it will be my constant work. So the main kind of like the immediate reference to this is talking about this bigger point, which is that we work for the happiness of all beings. So this is this very thing is pleasing to the Buddhas. Work for the welfare of all beings. But we can also understand 127 as saying, what is the this very thing, which is the practice of training to see beings as no different from ourselves, and that both equally beings and ourselves are of the nature of the awakened nature, Buddha. So we can also understand 127 as saying that this very thing, when it says this is what will please the Buddhas, will secure my welfare, and also drive away the sorrows of the world. What is this? This is to train to regard beings, other beings, as no different from myself, meaning as precious, as important as myself. Then, that's the first step. Second step, equally beings and myself are of the nature of Buddha. In some ways, this summarizes relative and absolute bodhicitta. So now let's look at the last part of this chapter on patience, which is verse 128 to 134. Imagine that the steward of a king does injury to multitudes of people. Those with clear, far-seeing eyes do not respond with violence, even if they can. For stewards, after all, are not alone. They are supported by the kingly power. Therefore, I will not despise the feeble beings tormenting me. Their allies are the guardians of hell and also the compassionate Buddhas. Therefore, living beings I will gratify as subjects might placate a wrathful king. And yet the pains of hell to be endured through making living beings suffer, could these ever be unleashed on me by all the ire of such a king? And even if that king were pleased, enlightenment he could not give to me, for this will only be achieved by bringing happiness to beings. No need to mention future Buddhahood achieved through bringing happiness to beings. How can I not see that glory, fame, and pleasure, even in this life, will likewise come? For patience in samsara brings such things as beauty, health, and good renown. Its fruit is great longevity, the vast contentment of a universal king. So this is, in a way, a summary of what he has been talking about in this chapter, this final. So Khenpo Kumpel, in his commentary, identifies this section as practicing Kshanti, and specifically this aspect of Kshanti is to to really like cherish and respect them. So this is an aspect of Kshanti. Normally when we say patience, you know, it's basically just don't lash out, don't become angry. It's kind of just suppressing. But here, this aspect of patience, this aspect of Kshanti, is further informed by recognizing the qualities of ordinary beings, and to actually cherish and have respect for them. So here, Khemo Kumbhal says, this last section is to practice this respect for beings, thinking of the consequences of both good and evil that is done to them. By considering, you know, all the advantages and disadvantages of like whether we act positively towards beings or negatively towards beings. So what is going on here, right, in 128 and 129? I think it depends on the translation that you have. It might be clearer or not so clear. Basically, in 128 and 129, what Shantideva is saying, he says, for example, if you see, here he used the example of like maybe a government official, a steward of the king, like punishing other people. Now, even if you have immediate power to stop that person, he says, most people, now he's not saying, you know, you should act this way. He's just describing how the world works, okay? So 120 and 129, he's not saying you should do this. He's saying, this is how the world works. Even in worldly kind of wisdom, a worldly way of responding. When someone, let's say, sees a police, let's say one person, doing something, maybe arresting even people that we care for, whether we like. He says, most of us will know, even if I have the power, even there's like 10 of us right now, and we can like capture the police and lock him up in the room, we know not to do that. Why? Because we are afraid of whoever is, or not whoever, we are afraid of the government that is behind him, the king that is behind him, or the queen that is behind him. So we don't do that. So this is sort of the logic he's setting up here. So then he says, likewise, if someone is tormenting me or harming me, even if I think, you know, I actually have enough power to like harm this person and stop them from doing that, but he says, in the same way, you should not do that. Why? Because there are two very powerful forces behind. He says you should think that there are two very powerful forces behind these difficult beings that are bringing you problems. He says you should restrain yourself by thinking that way. So sometimes Shantideva appeals to our bravery and say, be brave, be tough, act, like a hero. And sometimes in this case, he's appealing to our cowardice. He says, you should be afraid. And who should you be afraid of? He says, the guardians of hell and the Buddhas. So both sides. Why guardians of hell? Because if this situation, this person or this group of people causing you problems, causing you harm, if you think I have power to subdue them, to destroy them, and you do it, it says that will lead you to the hell realms if you harm them. So that's one thing you should be afraid of, he says. Then the other one you should be afraid of, quote unquote afraid of, is to be afraid of disappointing the Buddhas in acting that way. So he says, for those two reasons, when someone brings you trouble, when someone causes you to become upset, to become annoyed, to become angry, to become disappointed, to become frustrated, you should not retaliate against that person. Right? Instead, you should cultivate Kshanti. 131 and 132, he is saying, yeah, like even more than, so between those two reasons, as for those two reasons, one, oh, I don't want, to fall into the hell realms. And second, I don't want to disappoint the Buddhas. It says between those two, not disappointing the Buddha is what we primarily should think about. Because what is that really about? Not disappointing Buddhas, which is not losing the opportunity to become awake. That's the true meaning of like disappointing the Buddhas. I mean, to the degree that Buddhas can be disappointed. Again, we say, no. From another perspective, Buddhas don't become disappointed. But if we factor in like our emotional response, like our emotions on our side, we can say that ultimately Buddhas become disappointed whenever any being becomes further away from waking up, further away from becoming Buddhas. So 131, 132, Shantideva is saying, in fact, the most important kind of motivation for us who have taken the Bodhisattva vow, why we want to cultivate Kshanti, is because by cultivating Kshanti, we can awake into the state of Buddha. And how do we do that? By bringing happiness to beings. Bringing happiness to beings is both the method to become awake, as well as when we are awake, what are we awake for? We are awake for, we become Buddhas for bringing happiness to beings. So you see how the way to become awake and the purpose of being awake is actually the same. There's a question.
I understand the concept that you're talking about, but I'm a bit puzzled by the example in 128. He's surely not advocating standing by and letting.
I already said this is not talking about how we should behave. He's talking about this is completely, that's not the issue. I'm saying he's using the example of how people ordinarily act.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, he's saying you don't try to, you know, stop someone based on this short-term view. Oh, I can overcome this person right now. You don't do that because you know there's something more consequential as a power behind this person. That's
So
all the analogy that he's giving.
Act.
What?
He's saying that's the way people ordinarily act.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
In a way, like, you know, you're not going to go say, there's 10 of us. We can surely overpower the one. Because we know the one comes with an army.
Right.
So it's like, we should not. Yeah. He's not saying, oh, this is good. No, don't get stuck on this. He's saying, likewise, when, you know, someone who annoys us comes along, he says, take the strategy of thinking, oh, there are two very powerful armies behind this guy.
Okay.
One,
use it as a deterrent.
Yes.
Action that is unskillful.
Yes.
Okay.
we over apply dharma, you know, when we try to put it in all like, oh, he's saying you should not intervene when, you know, you see someone being bullied. No, that's not what he's talking about.
Okay. I think that's a very confusing example, but I get it when you.
You don't hang out in India, you know.
No, I guess not.
Yeah, like, so I'll give a contemporary example of how, you know, like many parts of the world. Okay, I'll give one example. Driving around in Delhi, okay, there's an accident involving a fancy car and a not so fancy car. Yeah, the not so fancy car will know I cannot do anything, even if the fancy car is in the wrong. I cannot do anything because if even now the fancy car driver is someone looking very frail, very weak, I might feel like, you know, you are terrible. There will be consequences if I act. You know, so this is not saying Shantideva saying, yes, this is how you should, this is how the world should be. He's simply describing, you know, like people know this fancy car driver is connected to all levels of Delhi society that is corrupt. Yeah, but I better not touch this person. So that's basically this example, 128 and 129. There's another question about, what's the difference, I think this question has been asked many, many, many times and has been answered many, many, many times, but it will be asked again many, many times because we need to remember, basically the question is, if there's a very difficult person, like especially in your family, and they keep bullying you, isn't there a line that we have to draw? Yeah, of course. Shantideva is not saying you don't draw those lines. Shantideva is saying, do not retaliate in anger. That's all Shantideva is saying. You cannot practice the Bodhisattva path by becoming a doormat to let everyone trample all over you. I've given examples of Buddha saying, somebody came and complained to the Buddha, oh, you have a bunch of monks, in our village. We don't like them. Can you ask them to go away? So then Buddha asked one of his assistants and said, please go tell them, people don't like you guys, move. And then the assistant said, I don't want to go because those are really tough monks. And Buddha says, bring some tough monks with you. That's not retaliating. That is, there's a problem that needs to be resolved. It needs to be resolved. Yeah, nothing here is Shantideva telling you to. So I think maybe because we have this idea that of Jesus dying on the cross, it's not what it's talking about here. It's talking about, do not let your anger and your clouded mind take over and retaliate, return harm with harm. Because we do that. Even to the people that we love, we do that. Shantideva is concerned about that. Be very careful, he says. Peter?
Yes, I was just really asking a follow-up to Judy's question. Try and clarify a little bit this analogy that he's giving, that when he's talking about the armies that are behind somebody who's really, you know, abusing or whatever, as being the guardians of hell, he's really talking about the armies of your own kleshas, right? That come to the fore in these situations if you respond unskillfully or negatively.
Yes, yes. Your kleshas, which not just in the abstract, you know, for Shantideva's context, right? The hell realms are quite real.
Yeah.
Are very real. So in this body, you will suffer the hell realms. After this body, you will be transferred to a hell realm.
Mm-hmm.
To the guardians of hell, you know. Both. Yeah. And of course, in both cases, it's because the kleshas are operative, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Judy.
So essentially, he's not saying, what he's saying does not preclude acting in a skillful way. He's basically saying, don't be stupid when you're confronting either literal armies or your own armies of confusion.
Yes.
Okay.
You know that already, right?
Yeah, I know
You
that
don't need to
already,
take a whole
but you read
Shantideva
this
course
stuff,
to know that.
but you know, you read this and it does take some clarification because like it's seeming so black and white.
No, not black and white at all.
Well,
Remember, this is a poetic work, you know.
I see, but
He's using exaggeration, he's using intimidation, he's using all sorts of things. He's not writing a treatise. We fall into an error if we think that he is writing a philosophical, tightly argued philosophical document. He's not. He's like, and then think about this, and then think about that, and then look at it from this point of view, and then look at it from that point of view, you know? So really, you know, read Shantideva until chapter 9. Chapter 9 is a whole other creature. That to the extent that something that chapter 9 was inserted later to score some, you know, philosophical points because Shantideva has become so famous. So, I mean, traditional, you know, teachers and Khenpos will be shocked, you know, if you say that to them. But, you know, secular scholars will say, chapter 9 is a whole other beast. Otherwise, all the other chapters, right? Think of it as a song. Not to be dissected.
with all sorts of hyperbole.
Yes. Like any song, like telling any stories.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
You know? Okay, translators, just briefly summarize how we should hear Shantideva. Maybe read is a bad word. Hear Shantideva, I think is good. When we read, you know, we are trained to like every single, and then of course there are a lot of Buddhist works that are translated now that do like, you know, pick every word out. But as Holiness Drugong Kyabgon says, you know, a lot of times they're just showing off. So they have to show, because the last guy that commented on this, right, only cut this line into 7 parts. Now I'm going to cut it into 14 parts. So then there's this competition to, you know, every word, every comma, every semicolon. This is a song. Think of it that way. So we need to learn how to hear Shantideva. Maybe not even read Shantideva. Larry?
Thank you, Dr. Lai.
Yeah.
If we go back to 128, I think we're kind of overthinking this in some ways. It just says that if an agent of authority is doing something wrong, do not respond with violence.
Yes.
Even if you are able. It doesn't say not to passively resist.
Yes.
It doesn't say
correct.
Have an opinion.
Yes.
It doesn't say you can't object. It says do not respond with violence.
Yeah, and do not respond in violence even if you can.
Exactly. So to me, it's I think solid advice, practical, very practical. But also, I made a comment in the chat. It's hard to imagine any religious or spiritual system that could possibly survive that advocated active violence against authority. So.
Yeah, well, there's that part, sure. Yeah, and I think Jeff also mentioned something along those lines. But anyway, don't worry. In case those of you are worrying that 128 is an example to talk about something else. In any case, It's an example to talk about something else. What Shantideva wants to talk about is, you know, when even when these troublemakers that you think you are able to like torture to make them go away, don't, because remember that behind them, so to say, are two very powerful forces that should deter you from, you know, acting unskillfully. One is, yeah, the guardians of hell, whether you want to think it's afflictive emotions only, the kleshas, or beyond the kleshas, you know, how the kleshas manifest in the world. He says, you should have a healthy fear of those things. Second, not disappointing the Buddhas should also be a motivation. These two things. And so he's not talking about what do you do with bullies in the world. He's totally not talking about that. This is our own issues that we're reading into him. He's talking about when any situation where someone brings you trouble, even if you think, I can easily subdue this person, I can easily beat this person up, he says, don't do that. See, the reason for most of us we are still not getting this is because, thankfully, most of us don't have those situations where we go, I'm going to beat that guy up for bringing me trouble. But Shantideva is talking to a bunch of rambunctious monks. And some of them would act, monk or no monk, would act like that. Shantideva's context, historical context, and in many parts of the world still today, perhaps even within the city that we live in, responding with violence is, kind of pretty straightforward. Yes, we're talking about physical violence. Yes, we're talking about striking. Yeah. So that's that. Those of us who are blessed or privileged or have the fortunate karma to not have that be our reality that we kind of understand immediately. Nonetheless, have a lot to learn from what Shantideva is saying in terms of responding with violence. Those of us who are fortunate enough, blessed enough to not face the threat of violence, and therefore have to feel like we have no other way to respond but to respond in plain physical violence. And those of us are fortunate enough to not live that reality. Nonetheless, here, right, the opposite of Kshanti is a type of violence, anger, the wish to cause harm, that is internalized. So when Shantideva says, don't cause harm, it's not like don't cause harm only to what's out there. Also, don't cause harm to what's inside. So we might not resort to physical violence, but we resort to mental violence. And that mental violence we carry around. He's saying, can you see that you need to drop that and replace that with Kshanti? Yeah, so we finish this chapter on Kshanti now. So the next time we meet, which is this coming Saturday, we will begin the next chapter called Diligence. Changju Samcho Rinpoche Ma Ge Ba Nam Ge Gyu Chi Ge Ba Nyam Pa Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Be Wan Shou. Okay, bye-bye, everyone. Ta-ta. See you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good night.
Dr. Lee. Thank you.
Gracias.
Mm.
Gracias.
Take waiting.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.